A trail of clues to catch a killer who's been on the run for more than 50 hours now. And there's a significant new development to report to you. The person of interest was last seen on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, exiting Central Park on 85th Street Wednesday morning. That's where CNN's Shimon Prokupecz is right now. And Shimon, you have that information and some additional information about DNA.
Right. So there is now DNA that investigators believe they have pulled off some of the evidence that they recovered at the scene in that alleyway where, as you'll recall, the suspect was seen fleeing. So there is they believe there is some DNA there, and they have submitted it to the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, which are the folks that would pull it and test it and see if they could perhaps find some kind of match. The importance of that is also, you have to keep in mind that investigators are building a criminal case. And right now, since they really don't have a lot of evidence per se linking him to the crime, when you look at that video, you see him from the back. Perhaps they have other information, but they're starting to see, what we're starting to see is that they're starting to hopefully eventually hope to arrest him, and then they have to prosecute him. And so we're starting to see them develop some of that information and evidence for a potential prosecution. But as you said, Dana, quickly, we're out here on West 85th Street. This is the last place that we know of. There is video of this man fleeing from the scene. This is the last place that we saw him in video, riding on his bike up 85th Street and going down the street here. And we don't know, as he approaches Columbus Avenue, does he make a left, does he make a right? We don't know that. What we do know, just based on our own work on the ground, he doesn't drive past Columbus Avenue, west of Columbus Avenue. We've looked at videos on that street. He's not there. So where he is obviously the biggest question right now. It's kind of hard to believe that in a city of this size that he would be able to hide so in this sort of large area. That's what's going on. And police tell us they're looking for him. They're trying to identify him, and they're looking for him. The other thing is, Dana, we haven't had a lot of information publicly from the NYPD since the hours after this. They have not held another briefing, and there could be a number of reasons for it. So for now, all we have is really the information that we've been able to gather on our own here on the streets, and certainly from sources. And we'll wait to see if at some point the NYPD gives us any updates.
Just one quick follow-up, Shimon. The video that we just showed that you and our team have been reporting on of the suspect riding the bike, and did that end, we believe, with an entrance into Central Park? Because that's the area where it looks like he is.
Right. He leaves the park somewhere around 77th Street and rides north here and then makes a right to go west. The other thing I think, and I failed to mention, Dana, was that what's really also critical here is when you see him in that video, the backpack that we see him in the initial video when the murder occurs, we don't see that backpack. So that evidence now is gone. We know that law enforcement was searching the park for it, Central Park for it, but so far they've been unable to locate it. So obviously already as he's riding, as he's making his getaway, he's thinking of ways to get rid of evidence. And so far, law enforcement has not been able to find that.
Yeah, God, thank you for clarifying that. So he's going west, people not intimately familiar with the geography of Manhattan, meaning he was going away from the park towards the Hudson River. Don't go anywhere, Shimon. I want to bring in former Maryland State Police Commander Neil Franklin. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the news that Shimon just brought us about the DNA evidence. Obviously, DNA is critical, but you have to know more information when you have that DNA about who that person is in order to make the connection, right? Right.
So obviously, DNA evidence is extremely critical in a case like this where we have limited physical evidence at this point. First of all, the NYPD is very good at what they do. So physical evidence from the videos that they're collecting, we don't know everything that they have. And relative to this DNA evidence, even if it doesn't lead us directly or immediately to the perpetrator, who it is, the identity of the person, by collecting it, say, from a water bottle, from a discarded cell phone. Maybe we get lucky and discover the backpack and there's more DNA evidence there, maybe the bike and so on. By being able to match that DNA among the items, the shell casings that were discovered at the scene, right? Maybe we get lucky and discover and find the weapon itself. So the importance of that DNA will link one item to the next, to the next, and then eventually to the perpetrator, the guy we're looking for.
And Major Franklin, the motive, that is still not really known. We have some clues,
Absolutely.
like what was written on those shell casings.
Absolutely. So right now what a lot of people are thinking is, okay, this is directly related to his position as CEO of UnitedHealthcare. And some of the things that we're hearing about the insurance industry and denying claims and so on, what was scribed or written on the shell casings about, delay and deny and so on. That's, in a sense, leading people initially to that being the motive. But you also, criminal investigators have to think of everything. Could that be a diversion? I mean, could that be intentional to have us looking in a particular direction?
Interesting.
Could it distract us from someone else? Basically, what I'm saying is, and unfortunately, we even have to look at family. We have to look and dig into his personal life, friends and family, what's going on there. We can't leave one stone unturned as it relates to motive.
When you say that, obviously, to talk to his family, you have to know who he is.
Absolutely.
DNA evidence is important for, first and foremost that, but also ultimately for a trial, as Shimon was saying. Do you think that they know who he is? Do you think that they have his identity?
It's a good chance. It's a very good possibility with these new photographs that he has that they already know who he is. It's a very good chance of that. But I want to say something else that I know these criminal investigators are looking into as it relates to motive. There have been times when people have orchestrated their own demise for certain reasons. We know that there are some, and I'm not saying this is the case, but as an investigator,
like for insurance purposes?
Absolutely, insurance purposes. Maybe they fear some type of investigation down the road. Maybe they want to leave their family in a good light. But there have been cases where people have orchestrated their own demise. And here's another reason.
And just to say, you're saying it in nice language. You're saying that it is a possibility.
It is a possibility
that he hired somebody to kill him.
Absolutely, it cannot be ignored. And this is what is really digging at me as a former criminal investigator. This guy knew too much about where he was going to be at a specific time. There's no evidence that I've seen of him, when you look at the timeline of him coming to that area outside of the Hilton and where he was outside of the Hilton, it's a very small window. Very small window. It's not like he was roaming around. We have video of him roaming around, going from one door to the next, trying to figure out where he's going to be at a specific time.
He knew.
He was there. He was laying in wait. Who would have that specific type of information as to what sidewalk he was going to be on?
Okay.
Where he's going in?
Wow. Well, that's
saying.
Yeah, that's the way a criminal investigator's mind works, and it's important. It's important. Shimon, I'm going to bring you back in. You have covered so many crimes and things like this. I'm sure you could be an investigator inside the NYPD yourself. What are some other things that you are looking at and you are asking your sources there about how the manhunt is going and what they are looking into?
Yeah, well, I have to say that theory that your guest there just sort of relayed, that's really an interesting one, right? It's not one that many of us have thought of. It's really, really interesting. I think for right now, for the NYPD, the big thing is to identify him. For all we know, they may be close. They may know the identity, and they're just not telling us, right? They work through these things. It's really interesting how law enforcement works. They don't want to tip their hand too much because they sometimes worry that the person they're looking for is watching media reports, or sometimes they may be tracking the person, and they don't want to let the person know that they know who they are. So that may be what's going on here. We're on day 3 here. I do think it's really interesting that we haven't heard from the NYPD since Wednesday. Yes, they put out a tweet yesterday, but we've not heard from them. So they're continuing to work through this investigation. Obviously, where the backpack is, that's a big thing. If they don't have the backpack, if they don't have the murder weapon, it's going to make it all even harder for them down the line for this prosecution. It really is. Because I was thinking about this today, Donna. We don't really have the NYPD may have this, but they don't really have any video at this point or evidence that we know of that directly links this person, that they can directly, with, beyond that reasonable doubt, identify him. So I think that's part of what is happening too and what they're working through. And so they really need to continue to find the smallest of pieces of evidence to link this person to an eventual prosecution if they're apprehended. So that's what's going on. And obviously the motive here is so important, and I think they're working through that here, but also, through his work and through where he lived and where his family lives and other relatives. All of that is happening behind the scenes. And even till late last night, we saw investigators out here just up the street looking for more video, making sure they didn't miss something. So a lot of detectives are on this case. They're doing a lot of work, and hopefully we'll get some. I really think it's important for the public, especially as we head into the weekend, to try and get some more information from the NYPD once they can do that.